Good evening. Welcome to our webinar on Affirmations for Self-Healing. This is based on this book by Swami Kriyananda ji, who is the author of it. And each week we have a different topic that includes a short reading, an affirmation relating to this reading, and we learn the power of affirmation through this, and then a short prayer. So we'll begin with a prayer. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Jaswarji, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, help us to feel thy strength, thy divine power and energy flowing through us in meditation and in activity, inspiring us, waking us up, and freeing us. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This week's reading is on the quality of power. Power is an aspect of God. Human beings often associate the word power with ruthless ambition and dominance over others. But it is a misdirection of power to exert it over others for selfish ends, and a misuse of it to exert it without care for their well-being. Rightly understood, power is the ability to command our own energies, above all, for our own transcendence, but also for the good of others. Such power is important for spiritual growth. Many people imagine that spiritual development is manifested as a sort of saccharine sweetness. The saints, however, are people of enormous inner power, before which others often tremble. Yet theirs is a power only for good. Its roots lie buried in the soil of pure love. And let's do the affirmation together, first out loudly, then more and more quietly. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And repeat after me again. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. A bit more quietly. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. Now whispering, mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And now mentally only offering it up to the point between the eyebrows. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And let's mentally listen to this prayer. Help me to feel that thy power runs through my veins, courses through my thoughts, and sets my noble feelings afire with love for thee. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This topic of power is very important, especially when you really are trying to develop spiritually in the highest way. When I read Paramahansa Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi for the first time, I felt a real spiritual power coming from that book. And as I read it more and more often, and as I started meeting saintly people, especially Swami Kriyananda, it took me a long time to finally understand that true spiritual growth, the highest spiritual awareness, the highest experiences of God as divine bliss and divine love are imbued with a great deal of power. When Paramahansa Yogananda began lecturing in America, this was in the 1920s, he came 100 years ago, exactly this month, he went to America, and he would lecture before thousands of people. And they were, seeing this yogi from India coming, and I think they were expecting this very quiet and inward speaking kind of a person. And he really surprised people because he would run out onto the lecture platform with his hair flying behind him, and he would shout, "How is everybody?" And you would get the whole audience to respond by shouting, "Awake and ready." And then he would shout again, "How feels everybody?" And he would lead everyone in shouting again and responding, "Awake and ready." And what he was trying to convey is that in order to be really receptive to the power of God, to the highest spiritual experiences and understanding, that we have to lift ourselves up towards that divine power with our own energy and will. And so Yogananda was a very, very powerful person. At his lectures, he would also demonstrate willpower and energy. And he would ask volunteers from the audience to come up to test his strength. And one time he was in the city of Boston in the United States, and 6 really big, burly police officers came up there because they thought they were really going to teach this yogi a lesson, because they were like these big, strong, meat-eating guys. And so they went up to him, and he stood up against a wall, and he asked all 6 of them together to push with their arms against him, against his chest and his stomach, and try to hold him against the wall. And what Yogananda did next, he just arched his back and thrust his chest out, and he sent all these 6 policemen flying off the stage into the orchestra pit, the pit in front of the stage. That was how much power he had. And if we want to find God, if we want to become saintly, we need to develop that power. But divine power, not just egoic power. When I came to Ananda Village, this was in 1977, I had never met a saint before. And I just was not really aware of what a saint was and the power that they had. And so when I first started meeting Swami Kriyananda, I was really kind of taken aback by his power and energy. And I was even like, wait a minute, this person I heard he was a saint, but I see him putting out so much energy and speaking, the way he spoke and the way he talked, and he was also very, very joyful with that same power. But I thought, either this person is a saint or he's the most egotistical person I've ever met, because he was just so expressive and with so much energy. And it took me a little time to finally see, and it was an inner experience. I wasn't doubtful. It just, I needed to know for myself. And I observed him very closely. And then one day I just had a really deep, life-changing experience inwardly in his presence that made me understand that this was divine power. It wasn't human or egoic power. And part of my confusion was that when I was growing up, I grew up in the Catholic religion, and the portrayals of Jesus were very often, they were trying to make him sort of user-friendly and not show that power. And so the image of him was usually he would be holding a baby sheep and cuddling it, and just he was so sweet and very sentimental. And there was an expression describing Jesus as gentle Jesus, meek and mild. And that was what they were trying to convey, so that he wouldn't be intimidating, because the true saints and masters can be very intimidating to people. And this is at times Yogananda was, and just for me, initially Swami Kriyananda was. But Swamiji pointed out that Christ himself, when he was just a very young man, he went to the Jewish temple, and there was all these tables right in front of the temple, and maybe in the temple, of people loaning money. Yeah, there were professional money lenders. And Jesus was outraged at the temple itself, because he was, of course, he was, it wasn't the Christian religion, wasn't there yet, it was the Jewish religion. And he was outraged at the religion that he was brought up in, that the people were using the temple to loan money and make money and do this thing for profit. And he went in there and he just threw them out and just shoved them and pushed them. And he was just one person against these really strong guys who probably had bodyguards and that kind of thing. That was the power of a Christ. It was the power of a Yogananda. In fact, Yogananda, one time, there's a story of him where he was in a park in one of the cities, maybe it was New York City or Chicago. And he was late at night, he was just meditating and in this park. And these gunmen came to kill him because he had spoken against the wealthy people in that country. And they were upset and they sent this gunman to kill him. And he just shouted and just told them, get out and go. And they just trembled with fear. And they were changed by it. I mean, they were actually helped and blessed, of course, by this experience. But this is the power of God. And it's not that we need to start going around expressing that power and, being strongly expressive in that way. But we do need to understand that if we want the highest experience of samadhi bliss, for example, there's great power in that experience of divine union with God. And in order to lift ourselves up to approach that experience, because in the end it comes partly from divine grace, lifting us up, but we also have to do our part to approach it and get up to it. And a good analogy is, if you want to jump onto a moving train, if the train's moving fast enough and you just stand still and jump on it, the train will just wipe you out and knock you over and maybe even kill you. But if you want to get on that moving train, you have to start running next to the train. You don't have to run as fast as the train necessarily, but if you run up to a certain speed and then jump on, and then you can catch that power of the moving train. And this is how and why Yoganandaji gave these energization exercises and taught us to develop willpower and energy as a way of tuning in to the divine power and energy. And what he said about these energization exercises is very interesting. He said, this is an autobiography of a yogi about how he developed these exercises. Because some people think they're just physical exercises, but they're really a form of pranayama, of tuning in and controlling the life force. And what he wrote in that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he said, realizing that man's body is like an electric battery, I reasoned that it could be recharged with energy through the direct agency of the human will. As no action, slight or large, is possible without willing, man can avail himself of his prime mover, will, to renew his bodily tissues without burdensome apparatus or mechanical exercises. I therefore taught the Ranchi students my simple Yogoda techniques by which the life force, centered in man's medulla oblongata, which is back here, can be consciously and instantly recharged from the unlimited supply of cosmic energy. And so this is how we get up to speed. And it's very important to develop that willpower, but by divine willpower, by tuning into the divine will. Swami Kriyananda had a brother disciple, Brother Bhaktananda, who was also a direct disciple of Yoganandaji. And he was energizing, doing the exercises standing next to him one day, and Brother Bhaktananda was doing the exercises, and he just said with so much energy and enthusiasm, he said, "Pump it in, Divine Mother, pump it in," as he was doing these exercises, because he understood that the Divine Mother is the creator, is this creation itself, and is the power of the universe. And so what you will find is that when you imbue even just devotion, for example, devotion without energy and power can tend to become just a sentiment and a pleasant feeling, a nice feeling. But then when it has divine power in it, then it becomes divine love. And divine love has a great power in it. It has the power to change people and to, of course, change each of us. So try to be aware and tune into this aspect of God. Yogananda ji said there are 8 aspects of God, and energy or power is one of them. And I find it very helpful at times, for those of you who practice Kriya Yoga, for example, to feel that it's divine power and energy flowing up and down our spines, up and down the Sushumna as we practice Kriya Yoga. And when we do the energization exercises or any physical exercise, feel that we're tuning in to that divine energy. I've shared these experiences before, but I've had a unique karma of experiencing divine power, the power of God, of Divine Mother in nature, and in many of her ways in nature. And one example, I was struck by lightning as I was speaking on a phone. The electricity came down, it was a landline, and in those days, actually, most people who died by lightning were either out in a field or talking on the phone, and would go down the wire and into their head. And so I was talking on the phone, and this tremendous lightning explosion and flash, just deafening, but it went down the phone wire and sent me flying across the room. And it actually melted some phones right in my area. And it didn't harm me, but it was like Shakti pot from Divine Mother. I really thought it was Divine Mother's power, even blessing me, because I think she wanted to show me that she's not just this sentiment and sweet and soft, she is Shakti. And that Shakti power is really very important for enlivening our spiritual practices, our devotion, our sense of joy. We live here in Kandala, and we had this cyclone, Nisarg, come through a few months ago. And the cyclone was really, really intense here. The winds got over 150 kilometers per hour here where we lived, and trees were flying down everywhere. Tiles were flying off the roof. Looking out our windows, it was just dramatic watching trees breaking just before our eyes. And it was really, really intense. And so it knocked down all the power poles. These big metal power poles in our area were all just bent right straight down to the ground. It was very interesting watching them as we would walk around the next day. All the roads were just filled with trees, and big trees, like big gigantic trees that fell over. But we didn't have any power here for 3 weeks plus. All the electricity was out. So we had to get a generator because of our work, our seva, doing online webinars like this. So we got this small Honda generator, a new generator that powered all of our stuff. And at Ananda Village, we have a funny practice of often giving names, spiritual names, to our cars, and because our car takes us around and takes us to serve others, and so we give the car a spiritual name and relate. And I'm sure people here relate to that, because I've seen many cars in India at certain festival times. People put the garland on the front of the car as a way of just blessing the car. It's a very sweet thing to see. I was driving once in the Himalayas, and I was heading up to Badrinath. And on the way up to Badrinath, you go through this narrow passage, and there's a temple right in the stone wall there, and it's a Hanuman temple. And there's a priest there, and every car that comes up, he takes the tilak, and he takes the powder, and he blesses the spiritual eye of the car right in front of the car to bless you as you go up on pilgrimage. And so we had this generator, and we were trying to come up with a name for this generator. And the obvious name, which we ended up coming for, was Shakti, because when our power was out and we didn't have any energy in our house, and we was low energy, and we just needed energy to get stuff done, we needed Shakti, We needed the Shakti of Divine Mother. And we would just turn on the key to that generator and it would start powering our lights and our laptops and everything that we needed. And in a way, this really is the spiritual approach also, which is that it's very important to learn how to work and get comfortable with tuning into, developing willpower, energy, and increasing the flow of energy into our body, mind, and soul. And you'll find that you meditate better, you meditate more deeply. Sometimes the difference between a deep and inspired and blissful meditation and just a drowsy, kind of spaced out, drifty, but maybe okay kind of a meditation is just the level of energy that we have. And so this is why it's very important to really take time at various times to tune into God as divine power. And you will find that your devotion is empowered and enlivened. Your control over your thoughts and your feeling, your emotions, your energies. This is pranayama, control of the energy, the life force in our body. And just also you will find that as you start tuning in these ways, you start to develop a greater awareness of energy and power. This is why those energization exercises, they do three things. They increase the flow of the energy coming into our body. They increase the awareness of energy and our connection to divine energy and power. And they give us pranayama, control over that life force or energy. And so when you have a greater flow, this greater awareness, and then also this greater control of the life force, you will find that you can do great things in this life. And you'll see it. I saw this with Swami Kriyananda. And again, when I came to Ananda, again, I thought a saint was going to be just someone who sat quietly and humbly under a tree, whispering soft spiritual words to his disciples. But I saw him, he would lecture and speak with so much power. And he would also sing songs. He was writing songs, he was writing books, and he had already founded a great spiritual community there. And he had so much energy and power there. And it was just, it was very enlightening to me to see that if we really want to give to others and help others, to be a cause rather than an effect, we have to develop a lot of energy and magnetism. Otherwise, especially during this age when there's so many energies floating around and so much fear and anxiety and different negative energies, that if our energy is low and if we're too passive, then we're knocked over by that energy. But when we develop energy and magnetism and this divine power, then we become a cause and we are given the responsibility, but also the ability to be able to help others in their fear or in their grief or in their sadness. So this is when we've been given these tools by the great ones, when we have a meditation practice that allows us and helps us to tune into the divine, then we also have a duty to give back to others, to be an instrument. But you also find that when you serve others and feel the light of God, of the Divine Mother flowing through us as we give to others, you will find that that power also blesses us and starts to change us, because that energy itself flowing through us changes the instrument. As Yogananda said, the instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. So again, really become more aware of divine energy and power. And this week, if you're going to be doing this affirmation and practicing it this week, then spend this week not just doing the affirmation and the reading every day, but also working more with the energization exercises, for example, and tuning in to God, to Divine Mother, as this Shakti power that can really enliven our spiritual lives and really awaken us in God. So we'll close now with the reading again, and we'll do the affirmation a few more times too. Power is an aspect of God. Human beings often associate the word power with ruthless ambition and dominance over others. But it is a misdirection of power to exert it over others for selfish ends, and a misuse of it to exert it without care for their well-being. Rightly understood, power is the ability to command our own energies, above all for our own transcendence, but also for the good of others. Such power is important for spiritual growth. Many people imagine that spiritual development is manifested as a sort of saccharine sweetness. The saints, however, are people of enormous inner power, before which others often tremble. Yet theirs is a power only for good. Its roots lie buried in the soil of pure love. So let's affirm together. First, out loudly, repeat after me. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. Now, a little bit more quietly, absorbing the meaning of this reading of this affirmation. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And now, much more quietly, absorbing it into our subconscious, inner self. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And now whispering, absorbing it more deeply. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. Again, whispering, mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And now mentally, and again, the word is mine, M-I-N-E, not mind. Mentally only offering it up to the spiritual eye. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening of other sleeping souls. One more time, mentally offering it up to the spiritual eye. Mine is the power of the universe, channeled for my own awakening and the awakening of other sleeping souls. And let's mentally listen to this prayer. Help me to feel that thy power runs through my veins, courses through my thoughts, and sets my noble feelings afire with love for thee. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you. We'll see you again next week. For those who are watching this live, we have this all India, all world event tomorrow called Change, Transformation Awaits. It begins on the morning of Saturday tomorrow, September 5th, You can learn more about it at www.anandaindia.org/change. This is a very exciting event, 2 days of inner spiritual renewal, meditations, and many other talks. So I hope to see many of you there. May the blessings and the power, the Shakti of the great Divine Mother and God infuse us and awaken us. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.